That was amazing. It's wonderful to have your voice filling this space, and I was up here just dancing with you. Love that song, and I do. I want you to have it all. And it brings us to this week. It's been such an amazing and tumultuous week here in San Francisco, in our nation, in the world. So many wonderful things have happened. And as I was looking at these four powers we're talking about today, and looking at the life's events and abundance and all of the things that are going on, I wanted to talk about that, having it all, because it's not enough to have the financial resources you need if you don't have love in your life. It's not enough to have the wonderful family and all the love if you can't put food on the table. Right? There is a balance. There is a truth to life that is so important, that we are capable and deserving of having it all. You know, the totalness of life without limits, without any limitation at all. We can have the family and the love and the job and the resources and manage it, enjoy it, laugh through it. And it's hard because we all get out of balance, right? Work takes over, life takes over. Something happens in our families with our health or with someone else's health, and things come out of perspective. And that happens for a season, but sometimes also what happens in our lives is that we stay stuck in the unbalance, the imbalance. And the 12 powers, I have learned, is a great way to help balance life itself. One of the things that happened this week was the inauguration of Joe Biden as our president. And if you watched any of it, or if you were anywhere around an electronic device, you knew that one of the things that happened in this week was a young woman, a 22-year-old woman from LA, blew up the internet with her poem. And she took an amazing idea, the hill we climb, and turned it into incredible art. I could not believe it as I listened to it, and I kept listening to it over and over again. And I wanted to talk about it in a specific way today. She took words we all use every day or in our lifetimes, and elevated them to a place of art that was truly divine. And if you look at her words and her delivery through the prism of some of our 12 powers, you see them come to life. So I'm going to offer us two things. Let's look at two of the powers. The first one we did at the beginning, which is understanding, the ability to know, perceive, and comprehend. Now, understanding is different from wisdom because wisdom is about a group understanding or a higher understanding, a divine wisdom that comes through us. You know, that ancient wisdom. Understanding is our ability to see what's happening in real time and to see the bigger picture within it, or see the possibilities within it, to comprehend the wholeness of the situation, and it's more appropriate to our everyday and constant living. And we claim understanding to be able to work in the world. And the second one is order. Now, this often gets confused in unity, and people think that order means predestination or that God is giving us something in order. But order in unity, and what we're talking about here, is the organization, the sequencing of life, that one thing happens after the next. In life and in Amanda Gorman's talk, she uses order in the title, The Hill We Climb, right? It is a process. Order is about the process of manifestation. And what stands before us, she uses the phrase, what stands before us? What stands before us is the journey, and in the journey is the divine order. In understanding, she uses the words, this nation isn't broken, it's just unfinished. So with the idea of understanding and order, I invite you to listen to the first part of her talk again, of her poem, again, so that you can see it with this perspective.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us.
History has its eyes on us. In her words, in the words of her poem, she expresses an understanding of what's happening in real time that is beyond anything that is human. It is divine, it is heightened, it is spiritual, it is important. And in her words, she finds order. Even as we grieve, we grow. That is the definition of order, that through the process, things unfold and develop in the midst of the journey of life. eloquence, brilliance, humanity, spirituality, all combined in this art, this moment that elevates us all to be able to see and say and clearly that democracy may be delayed, but it will not be denied. It cannot be postponed forever. It is inevitable. And to hold that space. For the last years, I have been looking for a way to express the longing, the heartache, the drive for this kind of communication of our national, personal, and spiritual longing for this one nation conceived with the idea that all people are created equal and that all people have equal opportunity. And this young woman, this 22-year-old, as she self-describes, encapsulated it so beautifully for me. I was stunned. In the next part of her speech, she starts to talk with energy and zeal. Our power of zeal is the ability to be enthusiastic, passionate, to start things, to motivate. Now, she certainly has zeal in the beginning too, but she talks about it in a new way in the second half. And she says literally that we have the power to bring out laughter in the midst of all of this. And then the next power we want to talk about is life itself, the ability to energize, enliven, make whole, and invigorate. And in this second half, she does a beautiful way of reimagining, reinvigorating, and repurposing Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech with his calls to every part of our nation to rise up. And she does it in her own words, in her own way, recreating life. So I give you the second half of her talk, and I ask you to look for the powers of life and the powers of zeal.
This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
There is always light. Only we're brave enough to see it and be it. That idea, that power, that strength is encapsulated in all of our 12 powers. Yes, she has the balance in this talk of love, strength, wisdom, power, imagination, faith, understanding, will, order, zeal, release, elimination, and life. All those brought together in this beautiful moment to uplift us all. So I invite us to use these powers, to use the powers that are inherent in us and in divine gifts that are constantly given to us, to give them to the world, to use our words to lift up, to use our actions to lift others up, to make a difference in the world, one word, one action at a time. For we have it within us, even in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of an economic downturn, in the midst of insurrection and divisiveness and hatred and murder, to be the divine capacity of love and wisdom and strength and order. For weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. We always have the ability to see and be the light if we are only brave enough. Let's take that to our time of meditation.